Hello friends, my name is Host Eric. I am the host of Talking with Today's People, and we are talking about a universal framework for interhuman behaviors. That's right, here in the summer debate class, we don't have a topic for public forum. We're playing around with an FDA topic. We'll probably do a round later, but I want to talk about, I'll take this opportunity to explain how everything should be. That's right. Now, we're going to start here by understanding that we are talking about individual human beings always. Okay? Now, look, I'm going to be saying lots of things that I'm not writing on the board. It's up to you to determine what I'm saying ought to be written down and how explanatory it is regarding the thing. So regarding this mechanism, I would make a note that I'm talking about individual human beings. We want to start there because it's easy to understand when we start with something objectively true, that individual human beings act, and that they act in ways that are largely consistent. There's inertia. In other words, I'm not going to all of a sudden start waking up every morning, getting some ducks, and throwing them at people. That would be not supported by the existing approach to life, right? I've got habits. I've got habits of behavior. I've also got habits of thinking. I'm not going to wake up tomorrow morning and suddenly start thinking that if I hear a bird chirp, a meteorite will hit the ground soon. I don't believe that in the status quo. There's no reason for me to start to believe that. If I were to start to believe that, it would require somebody to have convinced me of that. In the absence of such a convincing, I persist in my existing beliefs. In the absence of new data, individuals persist in their existing beliefs. Additionally, in the status quo, we have a mechanism called cognitive bias. Each of us is biased in favor of certain perspectives that we naturally have, and it has to do with what are known as the cognitive functions. There are a specific number of ways in which human beings can interact with the world. There are ways that they can perceive the world, either intuitively, through intuition, in a metaphysical sense, thinking about how things fit together, how systems work, how ideas work, how words work, stuff like that. Or they can deal with it from a sensory perspective, thinking about it in terms of objects, your body, this chair, right now, what I could do, throwing stuff, being good at sports, stuff like that. Those are two types of perceiving. Everybody has both. Everybody has both, but we prefer some over the others to use more frequently. My dominant function is called extroverted intuition. It's the possibilities function. It's how individuals who generate a lot of ideas, that means they have extroverted intuition somewhere high in their cognitive function stack. Okay? If you have a dominant cognitive function of extroverted intuition like me, then you have no problem generating plenty of ideas, and you have no problem improvising. I don't have any notes coming into class. I have no idea what I'm going to do when I get here. I'll figure it out when you guys get here, as I did today. Why? Because I'm an extroverted intuitor. If you're an extroverted intuitor like me, improvising doesn't seem so scary to you, but you'll also come to understand eventually that you've been suppressed for most of your life, and you've got to figure out how to navigate that. That's another story for another day. The point is, each of us biases our own preferred cognitive mechanism. So if, for example, somebody in here is an extroverted sensor, and they don't find this particularly interesting probably, they're likely to be thinking about what they'd like to do right now, or what they are doing right now. So if they have a little statue of a little guy on their desk, they're doing shit with it. Or what they much prefer to be doing is running around or something, or playing, or whatever. The thing is, if you have an introverted sensor, somebody who's got introverted sensing in the dominant function, then you've got somebody who might be thinking about their schedule and how their own life and planning goes through life. They might think, okay, after this class, I've got this other class. I'm going to do my homework after that. Then I'm going to call Aunt Judy and thank her for the $5 she sent me for my birthday. And if you're doing that kind of stuff in your head, if you're not listening to me, if you're driving in the car by your mom's not talking, you're driving in the car, sitting in the car, and nobody's talking. If you're thinking that stuff, you're probably an introverted sensor. If you're thinking stuff like about this kind of stuff, debate stuff, and how these models work together, and how you're going to run this in the next tournament and how that should work well because check, 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 yep, that's true, then like Edmund, you're probably a TI dom, which means you are thinking. Introverted thinking is your dominant function. And you like to think about, you need your inside your head for there to be a consistency in your models, okay? If you are a feeling-dominated person, extroverted feeler, your primary concern is how others perceive you and making sure everybody else is happy. So in that case, you're gonna err on the side of making fewer waves. You're not going to be controversial, probably. You're not going to be adversarial in nature. You're going to want compromise and consensus, not conclusive disputes. So all these biases come into play. Now, who are the people who do governance? Are they antelope? Who governs us? Is it the antelopes? Humans. Individual human beings. We talk about groups. We need to remember that the only people who act are people. I mean, animals might as well, but I'm saying groups don't actually act, right? It's a reification fallacy. So when we're talking about the assumptions, we assume that people who are functioning on behalf of the government are subject to different rules. That somehow they're not regular people. That if a cop in a uniform with a badge and a gun has his lights on in his car, you pull over. But if I go next to you and say, hey, you rolled that stop sign, you pull over to the road right now, you're going to ignore me, right? You're going to treat those two people differently. Why? Well, one has the legitimacy of governance behind him. The other one does not. Now, here's the thing. There may be other justifications for why we treat the cop differently. Somebody come up with a justification for why we treat that differently. Why would you be more likely to pull over for the cop than for me?
You have a badge.
Okay, so if I have a badge that says special guy, will you pull over for me? Yeah?
You have cool sunglasses and a hat.
I've got cool sunglasses. I don't have a hat right now, but I do have hats at home. If I were wearing one, could then I pull you over?
Yes.
Okay, but what's the real reason? What are some real reasons why somebody would pull over instead of not pulling over for a cop, but do the opposite for me? Yeah?
The part of the government.
Okay, but
Their sign of authority.
would it work? Would it be the same thing if the mailman tried to pull you over? Well, they're part of the government. No?
There are consequences.
Okay, so utilitarian consequences. This is one of the reasons why you pull over for the cop, because you know if you don't pull over for the cop, what's going to happen? Pow pow. He's going to shoot you. He's going to pow pow you. Okay? And even if you did nothing wrong in the first place, if you don't pull over for the cop, now you've committed a serious crime and you're in big, big trouble. Okay? You may have done nothing wrong at all. He might be pulling you over for an imaginary broken taillight. You might not even have any problems with your taillight. He might be pulling you over for the kicks of it and making something up. Regardless, no matter how innocent and true and pure you are just driving, minding your own business, driving on the street, if you don't obey the cop when he says pull over, you're in big trouble. You are guilty of a huge felony. You will go to jail for sure or die resisting going to jail. And yet, remember, what did you do wrong?
Not listening to the cop.
You didn't obey. So, who else do we afford this privilege to? If your teacher tells you to do an assignment and you refuse, does your teacher get to shoot you?
No.
Would things be better if your teacher could shoot you?
Yeah.
Maybe you, Justin.
I'm immortal.
Oh, well, that's good to know. I'm working on that too, Justin. I'm trying to. If you can share the secret of immortality with me, I'd appreciate it.
It's just to meditate.
Meditate? That sounds hard. Okay. Now look. So who gets to force their wrong ways upon somebody else? Remember, everybody's wrong, right? Let's start with that assumption. If I say, well, I think we should pass a law that makes crack cocaine illegal, and that we should put people in jail who have crack cocaine. Do you agree with me?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
So if we had a vote, you would say, okay, I vote yes on that law. We should make crack cocaine illegal and put people who do crack cocaine in jail, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So should we go back? Let's say somebody used to do crack cocaine, but they stopped doing it, and now they're a good functioning member of society, and they help people. They work at the hospital. They're a nurse. They don't do any crack cocaine at all, but they used to. Should we arrest them and put them in jail for having committed a crime? No, let's say the law was in place. They were breaking the law, but they got away with it. But now we find out, hey, I know you haven't done crack cocaine in a year, and you work as a nurse, and but you used to do it. You did it 7 times total. You did it on 7 different occasions, and we have a record of that now. So we're going to arrest you. Yes or no?
No.
No? Well, why not?
Because they changed.
Because they changed. They're not smoking crack anymore, right?
Yeah.
Is that why? Okay, now let's change it to murder. The person murdered your mother, and they got away with it. And now they're working as a nurse at the hospital. And there's some evidence that here comes the evidence surfaces showing this person murdering your mother. Should we still put them in jail? But they've changed. They're not murdering anymore. They stopped murdering. They're done with that. We can be really, really confident they're done murdering. They're not going to murder anymore. Is that okay then? We just let them go?
No, they killed 5 mothers.
5 mothers now, huh? Okay. Oh yeah, you're right. They did kill 5. He did kill 5 mothers. Okay, so we shouldn't let the 5-time killer go free. But the lady, she smoked crack 7 times. That's more times than the murderer killed.
Murder is more like worse. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
More severe.
But the murder, like, it actually affects someone else. The cocaine, it only affects the person that's crack, you know.
Well, listen here, though, Edmund. Drug addiction affects family members for sure. If somebody's a drug addict, you think their family doesn't suffer? You think their loved ones don't suffer? You think the people around them don't suffer because they're going crazy, being on crack all the time?
What if he doesn't have a family?
Okay, well, I'm hearing a lot of what ifs. I hate what ifs as an answer to something. I just said to you a question, which is what if, right? But I didn't phrase it. I don't know if I phrased it as what if or not. But it says, isn't it the case that individuals who do crack cocaine hurt their family members, hurt themselves, that they have an obligation to keep themselves healthy, not destroy their own lives on behalf of their loved ones? Isn't that the case?
Yeah.
But it's their individual life.
But it's their individual life, but they don't exist in isolation. There are other people around them impacted by their behavior. So shouldn't we make that illegal to stop them from doing it?
Well, if he's smoking crack, then he must be already corrupted.
Corrupted? How do we determine somebody's corrupted?
Like, they're evil.
Well, they're evil.
They're evil for smoking.
Okay, why does smoking crack make you evil?
No, I mean, like wrongdoers.
Wrongdoer. You're a wrongdoer. Okay, to whom are you doing wrong?
Yourself.
And your family and your loved ones?
But what if your loved ones don't care about you?
Justin, don't play games. Now look, here's the question though. What are you all neglecting to take into account? Okay, let's say it does do harm for yourself and your loved ones. So let's make it illegal now. Does that stop people from smoking crack? Is the first question.
No.
And the second question is, what happens, what harms happen instead? So, okay, answer the question. We've got a problem. Some people in this community are smoking crack, and for some of those people, not all of the people who smoke crack, sometimes, there are some people who smoke crack a couple of times and realize that is a bad thing, I don't want to do that. They're not having a problem with crack. There are some few people who are having a problem with crack who are smoking crack all the time, and they might be causing problems as well. And it may or may not be related to their smoking crack. Their smoking crack may be their way of dealing with some other problem that's bigger for them than smoking crack. Who knows? But the reality is we got a community problem. We got some people smoking crack. So let's deal with that problem. Let's make it illegal. Now, somebody explain to me why we shouldn't do that or what happens when we do that. Remember, we're protecting families from the harms of loved ones smoking crack, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now it's illegal. So, we just made it illegal, but we still have the same problem. The community, we still have members in the community smoking crack. So, cops, it looks like it's time to do your job, right?
Yeah.
So what are the cops going to do? Who calls to the cop station and says, Hello, cops? Yes. I'm here. I'm at a party. Somebody is smoking crack cocaine. I'd like you to come here and arrest him right now. Most of the time, the cops aren't going to get calls saying, please arrest this person for smoking crack because it's bothering me, right? Probably you're not going to be smoking crack. I'm not going to go stand right next to you and go pull out a crack pipe and go, hey there. You like that crack smoke? It's good for you. Inhale it deeply. You want a hit? I'm not going to do that probably with crack, right? So the point is, how is it? What are we going to do? How are we going to get the cops to deal with this situation? We know that people are smoking crack. We see them smoking crack, but they're not making it obvious to us. They're not saying, here I am smoking crack, come arrest me. So what are we going to do about it? How are we going to solve that problem?
With proof.
With proof. Okay, so how are you going to get the proof?
Take pictures of them.
Okay, so you send the cops around to take pictures of people, right? Okay, so let's say they take pictures of me and I appear to be smoking crack. They come and say, hey, we're going to arrest you. You're smoking crack. We got you on video. I say, that's not crack. I was smoking tobacco in that pipe. So then what? What happens?
They check if it's tobacco or crack.
Well, I mean, I'm standing at the door of my house. I don't have the pipe in my hand at the moment. I'm telling the cops, no, that wasn't crack. You can't arrest me. What happens now? But they have it on video. It appears to be crack. Yeah.
They temporarily arrest you and then they prove you. Like you're basically assumed innocent until like you're proven guilty.
Okay, but I thought you said they temporarily arrest me. Is that how we presume people innocent, by kidnapping them and locking them in a cage? Here, you're innocent. That's why I'm kidnapping you and locking you in this cage.
No, like they're presumed innocent until they're actually proven guilty.
What does that mean? What does it mean to be presumed innocent?
They think
Basically, like unless they get the evidence, they're still.
Okay, well, they temporarily arrest me. And I say, okay, fine, temporarily arrest me. Take me downtown. I close the door, lock it. Get in the cop car, and they take me downtown. Now what? Where's their evidence? They have the videotape. I've said that's not crack.
Search the house.
Well, so I don't give them permission to. It's locked. Are they going to break down the door?
Yeah.
Search warrant.
Okay. So they get a search warrant. I refuse to give them the keys anyway because I'm just being difficult. And they break down my door. They go inside. And they find that pipe. And it's got tobacco in it. Oops. So now what's happened is you've said, yes, it's okay to kidnap that guy. Yes, it's okay to lock him in a cage. Yes, it's okay to break down his door. Yes, it's okay to dig through his stuff and find stuff maybe he's embarrassed by. Like, I'm really embarrassed by my Little Pony collection that I've got, and the cops all saw it, and they made jokes about it, and I feel ashamed, you know? All that stuff's okay because it looked like I might have been committing a crime that nobody was complaining about, and your goal is to stop people from smoking crack, right? So, okay, now they let me go. What happens? Is that okay? They just say, I'm sorry, and then I have to buy a new door, or what?
Financial compensation.
For what?
Breaking down your door, damaging your stuff. And
Well, they had a search warrant. They had no choice. I wouldn't give them the keys.
sue them.
For what?
Sue the police.
For what?
For not, what's that called? Respecting your privacy.
Sue them for not respecting my privacy. Well, remember, they were already in the first place filming me to make sure to find out some way to bust people for smoking crack because it's a problem, but nobody's complaining about it, right? If you're getting robbed, if robbery's a problem, you're going to have a lot of people calling the cop station saying, now I got robbed. Everybody's getting robbed around here. It's terrible. If smoking crack's a problem, what happens is people go, oh, my heart is broken. My child's having a drug problem. That's what happens when people start smoking crack. Now, the government says, well, that is a problem. People's lives are being destroyed by this drug. Families are being torn apart. Let's make it illegal. So, next scenario. Now, they're filming people and they catch Bob. They see he is smoking crack, okay? Now, Bob's not that smart. They go to his house. He's 17 years old. His mom's not home. Dad's not home. He's 18 years old. He's not quite graduated from high school. He's still at the later stages of high school. But he's 18. And he stands at the door, and he's an idiot. So he goes to the door, answers it, doesn't look through the people to see who it is. It's the cops outside. And he's got in his hand his crack pipe, full of crack. full of fresh, delicious crack. And the cops go, aha, we knew it. You are a crack smoker. Come with us, young man. And they put him in handcuffs. They destroy his crack pipe, and they put it in the evidence bag, and they put him in the back of the car, and they take him downtown, they book him. And, this community has understood that crack's a serious epidemic in our society today. So they've made very strict laws. There's a minimum amount of time he gets in prison for crack. At least 5 years. 5 years in prison, minimum. So now he's down there, and it could be much more. And now he's down there and of course the cops are in his house, they're searching all sorts of things. Searching everything, because now they have some evidence, they just kind of bust right in there and you open the door and let him in, basically. And, oh, shit, look at this. He's got a bunch of old crack pipes. Well, of course he is, because he's a big crack smoker. If you have this many crack pipes, that means you're selling crack. You're distributing it. So if we're guilty of that, you can have 25 years to life in prison for this crack selling you're doing. Now, keep in mind, he's not actually selling crack, right? But he's met some sort of legal criterion that the prosecutor can say, I can now charge you with distribution with this higher penalty, 25 years to life. And I'm going to utilize that to pressure you into pleading guilty to a lesser offense. You're lucky, Bob. I'm going to let you plead guilty to 5 years. If you plead guilty, I'll give you that. You can do that. You don't have to go to court. You don't have to have any trial or anything like that. Just 5 years in jail. But otherwise, I'm going to charge you with felon distribution, and that's 20 to life. You could be 35 years old. 38 years old before you're out of prison. Been the best 20 years of your life. First 20 years of your adulthood in jail. Is that what you want, Bob? I don't think so. So that's been 5 years in jail then. Come out with a felony on your record, be unemployable, not have gone to college, and have learned about how to be a criminal in jail. That's what's going to happen to you, Bob, because that's the best possible outcome. Okay, great. So we put Bob in prison for 5 years. His family's devastated. They didn't like his crack smoking. They really dislike his incarceration. Once he's in prison, of course, he gets all tatted up. Has to join a prison gang because he's a middle-class kid from the suburbs. And he's going to get eaten alive in prison. He can't hang with those kind of, really bulky street kind of guys. So, what does he do? He has to join a gang. And the only gang that will take him, because he's white, is the Aryan Brotherhood. That's a gang, the white gang in prison. So, he goes into prison, a white suburban teenager with a drug problem. He comes out of prison 5 years later with swastikas tattooed on him and part of the Aryan Nation prison gang. Why? Well, he has to do what he's got to do to survive. Now, let's go back to the community leaders. There, we've solved the crack problem. Wait, there's still the same amount of crack usage going on. Well, we need to make more examples like Bob. Okay, so they make more examples like Bob. The community spends tons of money on this. Tons of money on what? Imprisoning people. Tons of money on taking people from their families and saying, because you have a drug problem, we're going to make you join a prison gang and make you a felon and make it impossible for you to get a job and all that kind of stuff, right? We're going to do all that to you because you have a drug problem. It doesn't stop people from having drug problems. It might reduce the total number of drug addicts for a moment or two, but remember, the cops have to go find you. It's not adequate for them to wait for people to call. So drug addicts, being smart, say, I don't want to be like Bob, and they hide where they're doing their drugs. Now it gets really hard for the cops to film people, as our earlier solution was suggesting. So now what we need to do is have periodic house inspections by the authorities to come to your house and inspect it to make sure you're not doing drugs, right? Because we have to get rid of this drug problem. And yet then people bury their drugs in their yard, etc., etc. They know when the schedules are coming around. They start communicating to each other. The drug police are coming to inspect because, of course, the drug police are there to inspect for drugs. But while they're there, they note some code violations as well and write you tickets for things like, oh, the space between these two slats in the stairs is too small. An infant's head could get stuck in there. And you point out, but I don't have any newborn children around here. And they say, it doesn't matter. That's the building code. So what came to be a desire to help the community with a drug problem has produced the following outcome. Same amount of drug use, regular human beings who do drugs, either too many drugs or some drugs or any drugs, end up being torn from their family and destroyed. The community spends millions of dollars on it. And the people who are trying to do the good thing are all they end up doing is justifying violence against people who are making decisions they don't like with their own bodies. Yes?
We can raise taxes and install those security cameras.
Justin, a police state is not the answer. You keep trying to solve the problem of crack usage. That's the problem. You're not going to solve the problem of crack usage for a number of reasons. One, you're not the one saying, I, Justin, am smoking too much crack. Therefore, I would like to stop smoking crack, but I refuse to take accountability to stop smoking crack myself, so I need a government person to force me under threat of violence to stop smoking crack. If you were saying that, at least it would be an honest argument. But what you're saying is, for other people who are doing something I know nothing about, for reasons I can't possibly imagine because it's inside their own head, that it is okay for me to advocate in favor of forcing them not to make decisions because those decisions might do harm to themselves or others indirectly. It's one thing to say, we have to force each other not to do harm directly. I can't go up and punch Justin in the face because I don't like his argument. I can't say, no, Justin, bad. I can say this as much as I want. Don't make bad statist authoritarian arguments like that. But if I punch him in the face, then I no longer have any claim to anything. I forfeit my rights. And the police should come arrest me, right? They should. That's a good reason for the police to come. If I punch Justin in the face, if I go like, all right, that's it, Justin, I've had enough. And I just start wailing on him, just boom, 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 boom. Assuming Justin doesn't beat me up, which is always a possibility. Assuming that doesn't happen, at some point one of you guys would have to call the cops, right? They're like, Eric's lost his mind. I don't know what's going on. He's physically attacking Justin. And the cops would come and they'd be right to take me away and put me in jail. Because you can't physically attack people. That's it. Period. Kids can't do it. Adults can't do it. In the past, we used to let kids get away with it all the time. They used to assault each other all the time. It's ridiculous. Anyway, enough about that. So, when we're talking about these issues of, like, how do we stop the crack cocaine? Number one question, does it have solvency? Write this question down. Ask this question of yourself about all your political beliefs and things that you think must be true. Does it actually have solvency? If we actually do the thing I think we should do, will it actually solve the problem I'm describing? Okay? Number two, what are your justifications? Your justifications need to be more than problem description. Problem description is not a warrant. Write that down. Problem description is not a warrant for action. Put that down. Problem description is not a warrant for action. Simply because there's a big problem I'm describing it is not a reason to do what you say we should do. You need to show that your action is going to produce desirable outcomes and or, most importantly, that it's consistent with principles. So look, if we are advocating that that we enforce jaywalking with a death penalty from now on, okay, we need to stop jaywalking. We're going to enforce it with a death penalty. Well, that's fine, as long as you're not the one jaywalking, right? If it does stop jaywalking, then all right, but either you're serious about it, you're going to actually have to kill somebody who jaywalks, or it's just an idle threat, in which case people will start to ignore it soon enough, right? So if you really want to deter it, you have to follow through. That means what you've done is committed murder, and the reason is because you're trying to prevent people from accidentally dying. That's the justification, right? If I am justifying murder with the argument that it prevents accidental death, I've got a serious problem. And that's exactly what we do with the traffic laws. Because when we say, yes, police, you may pull that person over. With the lights, they have to pull over. If they don't comply, you can chase them down and use force to make them stop. When we say you can do that for traffic violations, we're saying you can murder somebody. Because if that person decides not to go along with you and decides to, I don't know, self-defend, right? Goes, nope, I'm not pulling over. And then they finally get pulled over to the side of the road and the cop comes up and they go, somehow the cop doesn't walk up with his gun and everything. And the guy goes, I'm scared. You grabbed me. The cop grabs you like this. Pulls you. And you go, now I'm able to use self-defense, and you slap the cop, right? You slap him to try to get him to let go. You are guaranteed to be pulled out of the car, thrown on the ground, handcuffed, all that kind of shit like that, and be charged with assault of a police officer and all that stuff, right? There's no self-defense claims against a cop in the commission of his duties. It doesn't matter whether he's executing his duties properly or not. So in this context, we need to understand that ultimately you are saying the normal rules don't apply here. If you commit a traffic infraction, you are subject to use of force. You're subject first to threat of force. If you don't pull over, I will use force. If you pull over but don't comply and don't comply with quote unquote a lawful order, which is basically anything the cop tells you to do, then you are subject to violence. If you still don't comply and you try to roll around a bunch, even if you're not attacking them, if you just try to like roll away or run away or something, you are subject to increased violence. If you somehow manage to resist that increased violence long enough, eventually you encounter what? Bullets. Okay, those bullets usually put a stop to your resistance. That's what I mean when I say we are justifying murder in exchange for a reduced probability of death by accident. And what's even worse, there's no reason to believe that more enforcement of traffic laws produces fewer traffic accidents as a general rule. There's a certain threshold at which a minimum amount of traffic enforcement does have a positive impact, after which it has no impact except what? More dead people. Because what happens is the cops pull somebody over. It turns out this person had some unpaid parking tickets. And now they have a bench warrant. That means the cops say, if you see this guy, arrest him. He needs to meet with the court. He's got legal problems, right? Well, that person is now has huge problems, and it all has to do with their car. They're subject to imprisonment, they're subject to violence, they're subject to property seizures, all sorts of things because of some traffic infraction. And mostly because they didn't follow the rules of compliance in dealing with that. Someone might say that's fair because society treats everyone the same in that regard. All traffic infractions, everybody has to deal with it the same, whether you're a judge, jury, However, that's not true. Number one, police don't give each other tickets. Number two, police don't give prosecutors tickets if they know them. Number three, police are 100% sure to let a judge go or not pull them over at all if they recognize them. They have a cozy relationship with those in their industry and treat themselves differently. It's an aristocracy that's not subject to the same laws they're enforcing against the rest of us. That makes it crime. Nothing else. Crime. Plunder. So, when we talk about these things, we need to start with this. In the status quo, people are relativistic. They will say, well, that's just your opinion, Eric. There's no right answer here. That's why we have such political disagreements back and forth, the left and the right, and they take turns being the ones in charge, and we try to find the right balance. There's no single right answer. That's just your opinion. Except they're wrong. There is a single right answer, and it's driven by basic principles, foundational principles. We know that to say one has a right means that someone else has a duty. And I ask you, which is the duty you are willing to take on to yourself and everybody else in the world? So much so that you are willing to use violence against somebody if they don't agree with you. If they don't agree that that is their duty. And there's only one such duty that we can all agree on. No matter what our political beliefs are, we can all agree on the simple duty that you have the duty not to aggress upon another. That means not to physically attack somebody unless they physically attack you first. Okay? We all agree on that as a general principle. And then everybody starts making exceptions. On the basis of what? Well, sure, you can't aggress upon somebody, but you can if you're a police officer enforcing a traffic infraction. Well, why? Why do we let that person aggress? Well, because it's going to prevent traffic accidents. Utilitarian reasons. It's going to make everybody safer. It's going to keep our roads safe. All of these predictions, right? If we write more traffic tickets, people will drive more safely and there will be fewer accidents. It's a prediction. Is it actually true? Well, let's imagine. If you write 0 tickets, nobody has any reason to adhere to speed limits and such, except for the fact they have increased risk of accident. Number 2, once somebody has totaled their car at high speed because they're driving insane, chances are they won't ever do it again. And there's a limited number of people who are willing to engage in that kind of reckless behavior for their own self-interest or for their own reasons, not because of fear of policing. Number 3, remember that you still see people driving down the road. Why are you guys not taking notes? You're all sitting there looking listless. Remember what happens if you have a improperly motivated social environment. You are staring listlessly from the back of classrooms. Okay, when you should be engaged. That's right. So be engaged with your pencils. As I was saying, what was I saying before you distracted me with your failure? The police what?
The traffic stops and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So I'm predicting that by empowering cops to stop people for this reason or that reason, I will make everybody safer. Oh, you have one broken headlight? Well, that's not safe to drive on the road with a broken headlight. Let's make it okay for cops to pull you over for that. Now, did anybody ask how many traffic accidents actually include a car with a broken headlight and compare that to the percentage of cars with broken headlights out of the whole and find out if having a broken headlight actually makes an accident more likely? Did anybody do that? No, of course not. And even if they had, what we do know is that there are certain harms. Somebody now has $70 less because they got a ticket. They have $70 less than they did have. That would have been used to go out to dinner, but they're not going to go out to dinner tonight instead because they have to pay that ticket. So that restaurant doesn't get that money. Who gets it? The government. What do they spend it on? More cop cars to write more tickets. So how is that useful? That's not useful at all. The only people who benefit are the people whose job it is to steal so that they can continue to fund their stealing, right? So that's the reality of that. It's quite simple. And they don't hold themselves to account to the same laws. And so there's absolutely no reason to think there's any justification for that individual human being to be forcing me to do anything about anything with my car. Relativism will tell you, well, that's just your opinion. That's just one way to think about it. No, it's not. It's the only way to think about it that doesn't allow your random predictions to dictate how things ought to go. I predict that if we do what you say, it's going to cause traffic accidents to go up. So we have to do the opposite now. Well, why are you more right than me? Oh, we're going to cite a bunch of studies and data? Okay, now all of a sudden I'm playing on your playing field, though. That's the problem. Because what you're refusing to do, you're talking about the outcomes, whether you're right in your predictions about the outcomes, and neglecting to note the fact that we have 100% certain negative outcomes. Namely, somebody loses $80 for getting a ticket. Namely, somebody doesn't comply fast enough with the cops and gets shot dead. Namely, somebody makes the mistake of being dark skin color, and therefore the cops assume they must have a gun and they just immediately killed him. Any of those reasons are possible reasons why we can know for a fact that there are going to be harms. The harms are certain. The benefits are predicted. That's common sense, Eric. I mean, golly, if you don't police that thing, people will just drive however they want. Okay, but however they want is not, people don't say like, gosh, if it weren't for those laws, I'd drive 150 miles an hour right now and start running over people left and right. No, they don't. If they want to do that, they do it despite the laws, not because, and they're certainly not prevented by that. People are largely prevented managing their behavior by social expectations. Most people won't like you if you're an asshole. So people learn not to be an asshole, right? Don't be an asshole to everybody, Eric, because that's why they don't like you. It's a conversation I once had with myself, more than once, many, many times. That's why they don't like you, because you're a complete asshole. I get it now. These are the things that constrain us in real life. It's not, when we're driving at a certain speed, we're not thinking, okay, let me refer to my knowledge of traffic laws at the moment. Let's see. This area of freeway travels, let's go back, 65 mile an hour speed limit. So I'm going to set my speedometer, I'm going to set my speed control here right at 70. Make sure I adhere to the law because I know my speedometer is 5 miles per hour faster than the actual speed. People don't do that. People might do this. Ooh, I better slow down and I'm going 85. And the speed limit's 70. As I did when I was going to Mammoth. I was traveling to Mammoth, there was nobody on the road. It was an empty, wide open highway, not an interstate, but a within-state, intrastate highway. And I was sailing along in the Scion, which is really smooth at high speed, you know. I didn't notice I was going 85. There was nothing wrong with me going 85. It was perfectly safe. In that context, at that moment, if there had been traffic around, if it had been crowded, I would never have gotten up to going that fast. I would never have been so comfortable as to let my speed inch up that fast. I would have been determined. It would have been determined by road conditions so that I would have been going slower. Instead, I got pulled over and got a ticket by CHP for going too fast on the highway. Too fast for what? Well, too fast for the sign. The sign said 75 or 70 or whatever it said. And you were going 85. That's faster than the sign says. Too fast for what? Too fast for safety? That's a lie. It was perfectly safe what I was doing. The cop was going the other direction. He had to turn around and come get me, you know. It's too fast for you to pass up the opportunity to steal some money from me. That's what it's too fast for. That's the only thing it's too fast for. I wasn't putting anybody at risk. I wasn't doing anything unsafe. I wasn't driving recklessly. I was just not obeying the sign. So this is the reality we face. Utilitarian predictions produce certain harms and possible benefits. Those possible benefits, we try to measure them, but the reality is nobody measures all the benefits. They only measure those benefits that they see are obvious, and they only measure the benefits that support their side, probably. So when you look at the stats here, people are going to cite a bunch of highway stats about highway deaths. And they're not going to cite the total amount of money stolen from California taxpayers by CHP for reasons that are unrelated to actual impacts at all. Giving me that ticket going 85 on C395 may have had, in theory, some impact on my going that fast in the future. But it didn't have any impact on the actual safety, because I would only go that fast in the future if I were in a situation where we're safe and I naturally felt comfortable doing so. So it had no impact on safety. It may have impacted my behavior. To the extent it did, it cost me time. Now it's going to take me a little bit longer to get somewhere. Maybe, if it did that. What it did do for sure is take, I think that ticket was about $120, if I remember correctly. It took $120 of my money, and it made my car insurance more expensive because now I have a ticket on my record. And I didn't go to traffic school to get taken off. Now, if in fact a ticket does mean that you are more likely to get in an accident again in the future, which car insurance says is a justification for hiking up your rates, then why should going to traffic school make that any different than not going to traffic school? It's not like going to traffic school changes the way you drive, and it's not like ignorance is what caused you to break the law. Nobody speeds because of ignorance. Oh, I didn't know there was a maximum speed you could travel. Nobody breaks the law because of ignorance in that regard. Nobody says, oh, does that stop sign mean I have to stop my car? I just thought it said it was sort of a metaphysical instruction. Stop beating yourself up, Eric, for running this stop sign. No, people understand what the law is. They're breaking it because they know it doesn't matter. If I am legally obligated to do something that has no impacts, I am not going to take that law seriously. You can't run this stop sign. You can't roll this stop sign. Oh, I'm coming to the stop sign, and instead of coming to a complete stop, I just kind of roll through it a little bit. I see there's nobody coming either way, I just kind of roll through it. Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. If you do that, you're breaking the law. If you break the law, you're going to get a punishment. Well, why can't I do it? Well, it's unsafe. But it's not. That's the problem, right? It's not. You're predicting that people who roll stop signs more frequently are going to get in more accidents. There's no reason to make that prediction. Even if it's true, you're guaranteeing that X number of dollars will be stolen from them at the minimum. You're guaranteeing to put more individuals in contact with police, where police might abuse their civil rights and kill them. You're ensuring these certain outcomes on the notion that rolling stop sign is dangerous, which is unproven, unwarranted, basically. So now let's look at these critiques. These are common critiques that are built on all of these false assumptions we just talked about. Neoliberalism is an argument that's anti-globalization, basically. It says big governments collude with corporations. Big governments collude, that means get together behind closed doors and make secret deals. They collude with big corporations to oppress individual human beings for profit reasons. Okay? That big government and big corporations collude. Did you write it all down? Collude, C-O-L-L-U-D-E, collude with each other to oppress regular people for various reasons. Profit, mostly. Okay? An example of neoliberalism would be anything that has economic globalization in it, or what you might call imperialism, or the acts of hegemony. H-E-G-E-M-O-N-Y, hegemony, not hegemony, hegemony. But the person who has the state of hegemony is the hegemon, okay? So anyway, hegemony, this issue of who's the boss, who runs things around here. The United States is obsessed with the notion that it's the global hegemon and that we're the boss and we run things around here. It's nonsense, it's ridiculous, and it causes us to do stupid shit like go invade Iraq for no reason. So neoliberalism is in fact bad. However, a lot of people conflate two different things. International foreign policy in terms of military use and engaging the enemy, quote unquote, that's one kind of neoliberalism that's 100% bad. That imperialist desire to go interfere in the business of some other country that's having some sort of problem. Oh, you're having a civil war? Well, here's some American troops to go deal with it. That kind of neolib is terribly bad. But this label is not used by good thinkers. It's not used by people who actually think about things critically and expect consistency in themselves or in their ideas or in the ideas of others. So because it's not thought very well by people, because the thinkers who are talking about it are academics in universities who basically pat each other on the back for their nonsense sounds that come out of their mouths, neolib is thought to include also this corporate globalization thing. So I want to use an example from policy, which I just finished. We have this card that talks about how neoliberalism is responsible for the wage slavery and horrific abuses of Chinese workers in factories working for $2 a day, for 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, in those places where they have the nets around them to prevent people from jumping out the window and killing themselves. And in that circumstance, when you've got really horribly abused, exploited workers, they say the problem is capitalism, of course. That's the problem, capitalism. The problem is corporate globalization. The problem is American companies going and finding cheap workers to exploit, to make their products. That's the problem. That's what they say, right? What are they forgetting it about? What are they comparing it against? Oh my God, these horrible workers in a horrible situation compared to the United States, for example. So what ought they be comparing it against? Okay, think about it like this way. Well, it's been a year, guys. It's been a year since I included you on my horticulture mailing list. You've gotten a lot of wonderful mailings from me. You've learned about horticulture a great deal. And so, you know, as a consequence, your life's a lot better now than it would be without the Horticulturalist newsletter, for sure. And look at Joe over there. Joe doesn't have the Horticulturalist newsletter, and he is miserable. Look at him. His leg is currently being eaten alive by flesh-eating bacteria. It's terrible. All right, so have I then proved how important my Horticulturalist newsletter is?
No.
No.
Well, why not? I mean, compare to the guy who doesn't have it. He's terrible. He's terribly off.
What could be another reason?
What should I be comparing against, guys?
A normal human being.
No. What should I be? I'm saying, isn't your life a lot better now that you got my Horticulturalist newsletter? Compare your life to Joe's. Joe's is terrible. What should I be comparing it against?
Another newsletter?
No, not another newsletter. Anyone?
Your life without it?
Yeah, your life before. If I say, every month for 12 straight months, you've gotten this newsletter from me. Now, how much of an impact this newsletter made on you? It's really improved your life dramatically. Look at him. He doesn't have the newsletter, and he's in a wheelchair, and people spit on him all day for his job. That's his job, to stand there and have people spit on him. You're so much better off, and I got my newsletter. If you're not immediately thinking to yourself, no, and then that's fine. You are all immediately thinking to yourself, no, that's ridiculous. You're getting intuitively there's something wrong with it. But what's wrong with it is I'm not comparing against the proper thing. Now apply this to the neoliberal argument in China and the people jumping off the buildings and killing themselves. That's terrible. They're exploiting those workers. Those exploited workers have a bad life. Neoliberalism is bad because it allowed those workers to be exploited in that fashion. What do we need to compare against? The United States? Say again?
Their life before.
Their lives before. Did they choose to take that job at that factory? Yes. Over what? Over the alternative of being a dirt farmer and getting, instead of $2 a day, 20 cents a day. So for them, they're making a self-sacrifice to help their family probably. They're saying, this job is going to suck so hard. I hate it so much. I'm going to put in a couple years making this enormous $2 a day. And because of the nature of this employment, I live at the site basically and they feed me and stuff. I can send all that money home to my family. It's going to really help my family a lot. Compared to the alternative, which is no such job, no such opportunity to make that choice. That's the alternative to compare against. People who are writing about neoliberalism are saying these workers are exploited because American companies came in and offered them a job. They didn't say, you have to take that job. We're an American company. We're here to force you to work for us. That's not what happened. They're choosing it because it's preferable to the alternative. The neoliberalist flaw in thinking is one that divorces actual world happenings from individual agency. They are condescending, patronizing, and infantilizing to these Chinese workers to assume that they know best for the Chinese worker, that the Chinese worker would be better off as a dirt farmer than as a factory worker. But the Chinese worker has deemed by his choices that the other side of that equation is true, that he prefers this. It's not good. Nobody's saying it's good. Problem description is not a reason to do anything or believe anything or think anything. Except that, yep, that's how the problem looks. If I say, oh my God, I'm almost out of orange soda, that is not a reason why we should get more orange soda. That is not a reason why you should feel obligated to find me more orange soda. That's not a reason why I should feel sad. That's not a reason why anything. It's just a description of the reality. I'm almost out of orange soda. Good, I was sick of orange soda. I got coffee now. I'm happy. I'm glad I'm almost out of it because I was about done with it anyway. It's not necessarily bad that I'm almost out of orange soda. The fact that I describe a problem to you, means only one thing. That's where you start your attack. You say, you've described a problem. Is that because you like to sit around and have problem admiration parties? I know, let's talk about, I've got a problem too. Sometimes I lose my keys. Isn't that sad? Let's all admire it. Ooh, this can be really hard when you lose your keys. Yeah, it can. It really hurts my feelings when I lose my keys. Oh my gosh, I lost my keys once too. That is so terrible that you lost your keys. Losing your keys is awful, isn't it? Now, which law should we pass? Should we make losing my keys illegal to prevent me from losing my keys? Should we? I mean, losing my keys has caused me more problems than crack cocaine. So, why is crack cocaine illegal and not losing my keys? You know what really caused me a lot of problems, caused me a lot of pain, emotional pain? When my wife divorced me. So we should make that illegal too, right? We have to prevent that. We have to prevent people from experiencing that pain. Why? I bet Eric must have cried. We can't allow people to do that. Well, no, we shouldn't make divorce illegal. Well, why not? Because her feelings matter too, right? And I didn't actually want to stay married. Just because the divorce hurts doesn't mean you want to stay married, right? So individuals see things differently. If we don't have a system that accounts for that, we fail in every way, shape, and form to understand how things ought to be in a normative sense. Write the word normative down. How things ought to be normative. equals should equals ought. Descriptive equals is equals appears to be. Predictive says if we do this, then X will happen. So it's a conditional. Predictive is conditionality. It says if we do this, then this is going to happen. And lastly, prescriptive is a combination of normative and predictive. It says it's basically a combination of everything. It says here's a description of your problem, here's a plan to take, of action to take, and here are the predicted outcomes if you do take that. So, for example, a perfect example of a prescriptive action or a prescriptive statement is one that says, oh, you have a headache? You should take 2 Tylenols. If you have a headache now and you take 2 Tylenols, in a little while your headache will go away. That's a prescriptive claim that is making a claim to you that says, if you do this action, these outcomes will happen, and therefore you should do that action is the right thing to do. That's fine if we're talking about individuals, right? Those kind of prescriptive statements work for individuals. They don't work when we're talking about big groups and government and stuff like that. I didn't get to this biopower cap K. I'll just say the last thing here about A-spec and reification. We'll take a break. A-spec means agent specificity. Write that down. Agent specificity. Agent specificity. We allow, we meaning everybody, allow people to use statements like, we should do something. I think that's fair. And as a general rule, most individual people allow and others to get away with saying things like, we should do this, we should do that, when talking about public policy. We should pass a law that blah, 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 blah. Part of the fallacy here is there's a lack of agent specificity. Who should pass the law? Actually, Congress. Okay. Who should enforce the law? The police. Okay, fine. Now you've satisfied agent specificity enough. But what I'm saying is there's a reification fallacy. A reification fallacy happens when we treat an organization as though it were an individual capable of action. So when we say the police should enforce this law, what we really mean is each individual police officer is now empowered to choose to take action based on the following justification against another individual. We might encourage the police to fulfill that expectation of ours of them, but they have no duty to do so because that would deny them their own moral agency of the ability to take choice. Sometimes if I see somebody breaking a law, I might pull them over. Sometimes if I see somebody else breaking the same law, I might not pull them over. Well, but that's only true, you see, with the laws are false. That's not, they never say, oh, well, I'll just let that murder go. Cops don't do that. They just say, I'll just let this guy get away with it, but not that guy. It makes the whole system arbitrary, right? And the problem is we think the police act as a single monolithic force. Monolithism. We treat the government as though it were one voice. We treat the police as though they were one voice. Actually, it's a bunch of individual human beings, each with their own opinions, thoughts, and feelings, but they're acting according to a protocol that causes them to commit harm that's diffused. So nobody feels like they're the ones responsible for the harm, even though the harm is demonstrably factual and the predicted outcomes are only probable at best. And that concludes the first hour of Eric's very exciting discussion of how things ought to be, how other people are wrong, and why you should think like me.